after that, any questions from members?
Thank you, Chair. I will assume that the vast amounts of papers have been read by the committee members, but I will just try to recap any important information I feel that you should know about what we're asking you to, what decisions or scrutiny to do around the recommendations. So under Part 4 of the Environment Act 2021, we as a local authority are required to monitor and manage local air quality. Whilst we have been doing this and we create our own localised strategy and action plan, an opportunity has been presented to join the All Essex Air Strategy, Essex Air Quality Strategy, pardon me, consultation, and that we would then be able to adopt this strategy and the action plan based on all of our Essex neighbours. That includes Essex County Council and its Tier 2 authorities, Southend City Council, and obviously, if approved, it will end up being Thurrock Council as well. Adopting the joint air quality survey would facilitate partnership working and knowledge sharing with our closest neighbours. One of the interesting facts that has come out of this report for me is that around 50% of the air pollution we monitor is not emitted locally. So that's quite a significant amount, and it's actually more that is generated than our road traffic pollution. So working alongside our neighbours, as in Essex County Council and Southend, etc., will only benefit the fight to try to clean our air. I think it's important for members to note that we will not be held under control of Essex County Council if we do adopt the strategy and the action plan. It will be for officers and members of Thurrock Council to decide how and when they enact the action plan from the Essex Air Quality Strategy. You will have noted, if you've read it, it is quite generic, and that is because it needs to facilitate the needs and the requirements for all of those involved. So I will go on to say we will continue to develop our own localised Thurrock air quality strategy and our own action plan that we can utilise in projects and future plans within the borough, such as planning, developments, etc. That will still be on the work plan for these officers. It is our view that adopting this air quality survey is the best choice for Thurrock. It will improve partnership working with our neighbours. It could also increase the possibility of securing external funding because we would be doing it cross-border over a larger area. It will also, therefore, as well, allow us to comply with our statutory duty of having an air quality strategy and action plan in place. Other than that, Chair, I'll open it up to questions from yourself and then other members.
Right, I've got... Well, the obvious one is what Steve said. Can we adopt any plan as we've been to our forums and we've said we're going to present to them first, and we did agree that we wouldn't present until we've been to the forum. So is that something we can adopt, or we've got to adopt it after we've done what we said? Does that make sense?
You're asking us basically if we're going to work towards an air quality strategy with Essex Council, yeah? And the thing that concerns me is that we live in an area which is more polluted than most of Essex County. Will that have any adverse impact on Thurrock?
No, as I mentioned, the Essex-wide air quality survey and the action plan that comes out of that is an opportunity to work with our neighbours. I don't have to tell everyone, do I, air travels, and therefore the issues that we face here in Thurrock are not ours in isolation. we need to work with others to make sure that we're doing it in a collective. However, we will continue our localised strategy and our own action plan, and therefore that can be utilised as well by Thurrock Council and such members as yourself. This is more around an opportunity to work with our colleagues there in Essex and in Southend.
Councillor Sisterson.
Hi. I mean, 50% comes from elsewhere, presumably from London. Do we know where it's coming from?
I think it would be hard-pressed of me to say exactly where it come from, but what I can say is it's not emitted from this borough. So, like I say, working with our partners and our neighbours in terms of other local authorities, it's the best way to combat air pollution is go at it in a collaborative way. We're not going to solve this on our own, are we? So this strategy looks to bring together all of those partners, brings everyone around the table, which will enable us then to adopt the actions that we feel is necessary for Thurrock.
Councillor Hurrell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for your report. So cleaner air in London obviously helps, not just London obviously, but it does help with the winds blowing across, like it makes our air dirtier and more unhealthy. So you may or may not want to answer this, but you, Les, surely, as a health issue, is a good thing for Thurrock residents.
I haven't got the information to be out and the data to suggest that ULEZ is or is not appropriate. What I'm trying to explain for the members is that the strategy that is being proposed around an all Essex air strategy, we believe as officers is the correct way to tackle air pollution within our borough, especially as we will continue to develop our own individual one here at Thurrock.
Yeah, I think we need to definitely have our own in-house, should we say, system of working where because this has been on the cards for a long, long time. Air quality in Thurrock is one of the lowest in the country, and I know you said 50% maybe is attributed to Thurrock, but we've got 3 international ports, HGVs, you name it, we've got it, warehousing, and you know, it's in a large part of Thurrock. So realistically, we don't want this being sucked into Essex as to, should we say, getting absorbed and looking at the old picture and thinking, okay, 3/4 of the county's gone off. A corner of the county is okay because it's a general overview. So we need, to be looking. I mean, it's a hard one, isn't it? To should we say, implement when you look at air quality. If you're looking at the docks, for example, there's so much dust and that around the docks. I mean, Councillor Mays was trying to get something done a few years ago and found it an impossibility, didn't he? So, we really have to be serious about this one and keep it in-house as much as we can. Thank you.
Certainly, Councillor. Like I say, we will continue with our localised strategy and action plan. It won't stop, but what this enables us to do is work alongside colleagues in Essex and Southend as well. So it will, for want of a better phrase, a two-pronged approach.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. Can you go through the chair next time, please? Oh, sorry. Councillor Kelly's next.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, so 50% comes from outside the borough. Do we have a comparison against other councils? So is that particularly high, or it's quite common for other boroughs to receive quite a lot of emissions from outside? Do we have some form of way of monitoring? Is it just particularly bad, 50% compared to other areas? I mean, I'm guessing slightly it could be because we are just outside of the City of London, but do you have any research on that? Thank you.
Air quality is constantly monitored here in Thurrock, so there will be data available. I don't have that data here, obviously, but what I will be able to do is go away and ask for benchmarking to be provided to the committee members. I think it's quite clear that pollution is travelling from heavily polluted areas, and therefore anything we can do to counter that will be to the benefit of our residents. So I will go away and I'll see around benchmarking against other local authorities and their air quality reports that get published, and I'll get those details back to the members.
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much of a question, actually, but I'm glad you've clarified a few things there, because I'd actually written down, you know, obviously the report is very sort of generic, and I was wondering how you was actually going to, what could be done to actually pick out the concerns for Thurrock itself. And actually just picking up on a little point from Councillor Jones, you know, I did notice several months ago there's one particular company in Tilbury Docks that deal with very heavily with aggregates and things, and I now notice that they are sprinkling quite heavily on these huge sort of piles that they've got there, and hopefully that's sort of as a result of concerns that have been raised locally. So you have answered my question that I have got written down, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think it's important as well, so that I clarify for members the difference between nuisance dust, which is what is emitted from businesses, etc., in the ports, to air pollution. So nuisance dust would be categorised, the best way would be that you'd see it on your cars, you see it on your windows, things like that. That's nuisance dust. That doesn't form part of the air quality strategy, because the particles are not, by law, defined as air pollutants. The air pollutants defined by law are that microscopic that no one here will see them. So there is a clear distinction set out by law of what is nuisance dust and what is air pollution. The difference is air pollution we can deal with under the strategy. Nuisance dust is something that either, and I know that the areas that members are concerned around it, such as Tilbury, etc., those companies are governed by the Environment Agency, and I can tell you that the environmental enforcement team here and protection team here at Thurrock have received complaints from members as well as residents. So we liaise with the EA around their regulations and ask them to step up regulations against those particular businesses, because ultimately it is them that can take action against those kind of firms.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Michael, for bringing this report forward. I just wanted to touch on the advice regarding reducing damp and condensation. Have you spoken to the housing department and seen if how this can be implemented if we bring this policy into Thurrock?
This policy itself is due to go out to consultation with the wider Essex residents and communities. However, I can say that internal consultations have been extensive in relation to the Thurrock air quality survey, as well as the action plans that vast other areas within the council, not just the air quality officer, will have to engage in. So I can confirm that we have had extensive consultations with those departments.
Sorry, Councillor Sisterton.
So is it going out for consultation in Thurrock as well?
Yes, if this paper is eventually approved, then this will go out to consultation to the residents of Thurrock, and Thurrock Council will form part of that consultation process. That's why me and my officers feel that it is the right thing to do, but obviously the decision is a member one.
I mean, it makes sense not to duplicate exactly what they've done, but it will need tailoring, because the issues in Thurrock are clearly different to places in North Essex, you know, sort of rural places. So that's all.
We'll go through our own internal process as well, Councillor. This isn't to be used as a supplement for us doing that piece of work. That will continue to be done and looks to be completed next year.
Thank you. My concern, blaming pollution from outside of Thurrock, when we clearly see HGV emissions, and there's more. I imagine there's more HGVs in and out of our ports than anywhere in Essex, and we also got plants like Thurrock, Tarmac, P&G, Green Energy, all running 24/7 and all pumping out unknown emissions, well, unknown to us. have we measured that? Is there reports? Do we know what they're actually throwing out? And is that friendly dust that we just see on our cars, or is that dust that's actually harming us? Because there's a lot of, that's just four I thought of, but there's a lot of companies 24/7, and we see the chimneys throwing out all sorts, don't we? So have we actually measured it? Do we know what the emissions that they are putting out?
The emissions of the businesses wouldn't necessarily fall down to the requirement of the council. However, regulations do govern everyone that has emissions, from us when we drive our cars to big companies that have those emissions into the air. I just want to remind everyone again that when we talk around dust, etc., that isn't forming part of this. That is something else. It's a different type of pollutant. It wouldn't be classed or legally verified within our air quality strategy. It would fall to, like I say, the Environment Agency is predominantly the agency that controls many organisation, for instance, down in the docks and the industrialised areas of Thurrock.
So good. So I can't get my head around. So we're saying 50% is coming in from outside, but we don't know what green energy are putting out. So how do we know? How do we measure that's 50% coming in if we've got these companies and we don't know what they're emitting? So I don't know how you can come up with 50% us, 50% them, when we've got no figures on these big companies.
The air quality officer obviously works alongside other partners to gain data. What I'm trying to say is we don't necessarily, as Thurrock Council, collate that data itself. The data is made available through the channels that is the air quality stream work. So those figures have been determined through the data that is received, and if I can get a breakdown of that data, I will also pass that information through to committee members alongside the benchmarking I mentioned earlier.
So, like for example, if I call you tomorrow and say, what does green energy output, would there be figures somewhere that we know whether they're harmful or it's not harmful to the environment?
I'll have to come back to you once I speak to that particular specialist officer. But like I say, all of that data is collated, and therefore it isn't guessed. It is data that's collated by one organisation or ourselves.
So we all drive through it every day and think, well, that can't be right, don't we? But we haven't got the skills or the education to know whether that's right. But it's what we see, isn't it? I think that. So yeah, we do need data. Councillor Hurrell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, page 242, the graph. I'll let you get there first. Page 242. Well, Essex Air Quality Strategy. Is it 20 or 20 in that? Yes, sorry, yes. Can we put it on the screen by any chance, or in case other people haven't got it? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. It says earlier WHO guideline 2021. UK limit value and UK air quality target. Any idea, the figures, the graph looks quite alarming, to tell the truth. Any idea where Thurrock sits in this? Yeah.
I don't know where Thurrock sits, but I can take that away and again report that back to you.
Okay, if you would please, yeah, thank you.
Any more questions on this topic? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. And I did go through the chair this time. I suppose what concerns me is that what is bad air and what is acceptable air. If we say, for instance, all these factories around here that are putting out emissions and things like that, well, we all know if you're anywhere near P&G, you can smell it. And until Redox, or people that live in Tilbury know what's being put out, and so it concerns me a little bit. Is that good air, or is that bad air? You know, what we're looking at is calling bad air. To me, it just seems a bit confusing. We know that air quality in Thurrock is not good, whether irrespective if it comes out of a factory, the docks, off of lorries or anything. So I think we've got to look at the factories as well, whether or not we call it harmful or not harmful. It's still particles that's coming into the air that's not, as far as I'm concerned, not good for people. Thank you.
No more questions. So the question I asked earlier, can we adopt this strategy knowing with what was, yes, everybody happy to adopt that, and then, but we still go to our forums and to whether, okay, that's agreed then, that is agreed. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mike. Then the next one is update on Tilbury Gravesend Ferry, and Paul is going to present the report on that, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So it's a very brief update paper that you have before you. I just pick out a few salient points. Appreciate that you would have had a chance to read it. So key things really are that the ferry, as you know, ceased on the 30th of March earlier this year. So the service hasn't run since that date. It was previously co-funded by Kent County Council and Thurrock Council, part subsidy, as well as the operator taking revenue to justify the ferry. So with our funding withdrawal, the ferry was no longer operationally viable, so the ferry operator pulled out. So since then, since Jetstream finished, we've been working with the Thames Estuary Growth Board, which is a collaboration ourselves, Kent County Council, a range of partners as listed in the paper, to see what we can do to reinstate the ferry, because there's a lot of public demand still for it to come back. We've always been clear that there's no public funding towards it. It needs to run on a commercial basis. So having expressed that desire for it to continue, as have partners in the Thames Estuary Growth Board, it was commissioned in September 2024, a study to look at how commercial model would work for the ferry to be reinstated. That work is ongoing. It was due to report at the end of November, and I followed up with the consultants, and they told me yesterday that it would be finished now in January. So I was hoping to give you an update today, live update if you like, of the outcome of the consultant study. That won't now be available to January. So what we have done is made clear, I've met with the consultants, I've made it clear our desire for the ferry to come back, but I've also been clear that it needs to run on a commercial basis, as have other partners as well. I have explored with the Department for Transport whether we could use any of our grant funding that we receive for public transport provision towards the ferry, and they've told us no, we can't. So having exhausted that, it's very much with the consultants now to see how a commercial ferry could operate, and I'll be happy to provide an update to this committee at some point in the future once I've got the outcome of the study work. But that's currently the position today. Thank you, members.
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Paul. You're obviously just reading in a report, the footfall or the passenger number last year, or that recorded year was 107,000 people. I don't think I've ever heard it said or expressed, maybe perhaps using the business model that was there previously with Jetstream. Is there a number that they would say this is the amount that we need per person, per crossing, to actually make that service viable? Now, I'll give you I could give you several examples, but a perfect one is I regularly go over to Gravesend to visit a family member. I would happily, and we always used to go on the ferry and return on the ferry, but I would happily pay kind of 6, 7, 8, 9 quid to get over there rather than drive all the way around. And the person that I go to see, elderly lady, she would very happily actually pay that. And I know not everybody has got this as disposable money, but there are an awful lot of people that do. And is that number, if you can define that, is that where we really truly need to be to get a service back back on. I mean, I know there are a lot of people use that service that really, I mean, let's just say that there's a lot of people cruising that can come over, and when people go on holiday, there are always costs to get to the point of departure, wherever it be, airport, etc., etc., etc. And I'm sure these people would be very happy to pay a reasonable amount of money. There are, I mean, dare I say it, there are youngsters using the school for schooling. And I suspect, I don't know for certain, that some of it's private schooling. Could the parents of these children actually pay an enlarged fee because they've actually chosen to locate their child in another county, knowing that there's a cheap ferry there? But would these people be happy to pay that? So have you got a number where the previous model could be seen as profitable?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Arnold. I haven't got a number, but I know that the consultants are working on different models as to what the number could be and what the pricing structure for a range of numbers could be. So, for example, if it was to generate, let's say, double that amount, 200,000 people, the amount per passenger would need to be less to enable the running cost to be met. So one of the things the consultants are looking at, what's the ideal, what's the optimum number, what's the optimum pricing structure, and what sort of catchment area either side would attract people to use the ferry. So you quite rightly mentioned school children, and back in April, May, we received a lot of correspondence from parents asking how their children are now going to get to school now that the ferry's been taken away. Bearing in mind it's a foot ferry, not a passenger ferry, so whichever side you know, when you get to the other end, you're on your own. You're on either a bike or walking. So, you know, it's quite limited catchment area to make it work. But I know that the consultants are working on a range, as I say, a range of options on pricing and patronage in order to be able to justify a commercial operation.
Okay, I mean, I could pick another example. A company I work for travel all over the place by rail, by vehicle, whatever. Very often I am South Coast or coming back from East Kent, and I actually have to rail into London to get back to where we are now. Now, prior to that, colleagues in the company were actually stopping at Gravesend, jumping across on the ferry, cabbing it to their vehicle, you know, and then on home. There are lots of people that use that ferry that are not based in the two catchment areas. So, thank you.
Councillor Dye?
Yeah, it's a question for Paul. Could we get sites of the report prior to we have a meeting? So when it does come in and you've read it, if you get it out to us, we'd be grateful. Is that okay? And then
yeah, that'd be fine if members are happy with that.
So what we can gather from today, that it's very much more alive than it was when the council did it. So there is ongoing progress, and we've got hope for the future that there may be a ferry.
Yeah, and that's right, Councillor Byrne, and we're continuing to make the case for the ferry. We're trying to encourage a workable model. We're working with the consultants. We're working with our partners. You know, with very much the ambition to reinstate the ferry, but it needs to be run we need to wash its face on a commercial basis.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. The pier on the Gravesend side, that's owned by Uber now, I believe, isn't it? What the ferry was using before. I just wonder, is there a cost that's got to be, you know, is there costings to that's got to be incorporated in the actual ferry service?
I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to get back to you.
Thank you. Have we exhausted that one? Everybody clear on that one? Yes, thanks for your report, Paul. Next one is waste strategy, which Paul Southall will present a report on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members. This item is split into two parts. It's the waste strategy update, and then there's a second part, which is the waste and recycling collection policy. So, okay, with you, Chair, I'll start on the waste strategy update. So the report outlines the changes that have been made since the 2021-2031 waste strategy was brought about by changes in legislation since the strategy was approved by Cabinet in November 2020, and to changes to the operational delivery of service as a result of the strategy. The report also seeks to provide an update on the progress of the strategic objectives, of which there's 5 contained in the strategy document. I think it's important to note, it's in the paper, that the waste strategy is a living document that requires, or will require, frequent and continual development and updating. And since writing this paper, things have changed. Even on Friday, there was an announcement by DEFRA on some further changes to simpler recycling. I'm currently putting a briefing note together for SLT. Yeah, so any questions on the strategy update, Chair?
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if this would, obviously I appreciate it split into 2 parts. So the first was, personally, I think the rollout of the weekly bin collection has gone quite well, actually. I'm enjoying the food waste bin. Clearly, we're recycling better when it comes to that now. I mean, the only problem is, I mean, God forbid you don't put your general waste bin out. If you forget that, you know, it could be a month before it's collected. But have we got a rough idea on how well we're doing in terms of recycling? So I'll give you an example. Last year we would have 52 collections. This year it's about half of that. Are we monitoring sort of the tonnage of recycling? And I'll give you an example. Today, my blue bin's completely full, and I've got some recycling bins inside the house. And I did consider putting the recycling bin inside the house in the blue bin, but obviously it was full. So I've left it there, and on Thursday, hopefully I'll empty that. But I did wonder whether residents respectfully might use the easier option of just putting it in the general waste bin. So are we monitoring tonnage of recycling, and is it any better or worse? I could imagine, through no fault of anyone's, it could be slightly worse, because you would think 52 blue bin collections in a year, you're going to get more recycling than what you would with half of that. But I just wondered if it's, something that we're keeping an eye on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so there are annual league tables that are released by let'srecycle.com, and they come from the waste data flow tonnages that all local authorities have to report on. So Thurrock don't do particularly well in those league tables. So if I give you a bit of background, 2021-2022, we were at number 305 out of 333 in the country, with 28.7% of everything that the council produce in terms of waste is recycled. If you go to the top of the table, you're looking at sort of 65, 67%. So 22-23, we're at 311 with 28.5, so a slight dip. 23-24, we made some good progress, and we're up to 30% now. And just looking at the first quarter of this year, we're up at 33%. So we are making improvements. And another indicator in that table, and something that we look at nationally, is how many kilograms per head are we producing as an authority, and that's gone from 21-22 to 402 kilos, and we're currently down to 387, and the national average is about 409. So in terms of kilos per head, we're doing well. When you look at the kilos per head and the actual percentages over those 3 years we just looked at, although our recycling rate is improving, we actually went down the table, and what that tells me and tells the team is that we're not making enough change quick enough, in line with what other authorities are doing. So we're a little bit behind the curve. Now that's changed. As we all know, we've made some changes in April. And I've got some sort of numbers that I can just sort of share with you now to give you an answer to your question. So if we look at July to October, and I say July because that's when the food waste started being introduced. In terms of residual waste, so the grey bin waste, we've actually collected between July and October 1,748 tonnes less than we did for the same period last year. Recycling for the same period, we've collected 354.83 tonnes more, and food waste 700 tonnes more. So when you start converting that, not just obviously that's had an impact on our recycling rate. So first quarter up at 33, I think it's 0.1%, as I just said. That's also offers a saving in terms of last year, the budget savings that we had for this year. So those numbers alone are already showing us a £264,000 saving in those months, in those improvements in those tonnages. My only caveat on that at the moment, yes, we know some of the waste has gone to the HWRC, but that still will be captured and recycled, and I'm working on those numbers with the team at the moment.
Councillor Lydiard.
Yeah, thank you for your report. I think the strategy is absolutely fine. I think the adoption by residents in my ward is a bit lacking, to be honest. I drive around and I see lots of bins overflowing. They're not using their waste food bins in many circumstances. And I see that there's got to be a lot more effort in trying to get these people to operate the way you want them to. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it does touch on on the paper. So one of the strategic objectives is about waste minimisation, and as a part of that strategy, we've employed a recycling officer. That officer will look at heat maps and data where recycling isn't quite where it should be. So the crews are reporting high areas of contamination. And then we can deploy the recycling officer to those areas. If it's a big area, we can do targeted communications, whether that be leaflets, bin tags, or whatever we need to do. But also, that officer can go door knocking and find out if those residents need any particular support or if they're having any, challenges following the recycling process.
Have you identified any areas that are below par in terms of, meeting the strategy?
Literally in the process of getting that data together at the moment.
My ward is Tilbury, and I've noticed it's not good in most of Tilbury.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Paul. Page 109, simpler recycling. It says here the government has got ideas to go back at curbside collections, basically separating. We had this once before. What ideas have we got? Because I seem to remember we used to have boxes galore outside the houses, and sometimes it wasn't always achievable as to do that collection in there. And many a time there would be the residents that used to, should we say, persevere, separating all the goods, only for it to be put in the same waste bin as it come up the road, simply because it couldn't keep up. So what ideas have we got for that, Paul, please? Thank you.
So simpler recycling sets out to do what it says on the tin. So what the government are doing is standardising waste and recycling collections across the country. So wherever you live, wherever you move to, from March 2026, the same recycling service will be in place. And what that will consist of is 4 bins. There'll be general waste, recycling, paper and card, now as a separate mix. That was released as an update on Friday. And like I said, I'm doing a briefing note on that for SLT at the moment. And food waste, which is also obviously compulsory, and garden waste, which still remains optional. So I think on the whole, obviously we're not, there's going to be no further, there's going to be no deviation from those 4 bins. That's what the government, that's what the legislation has set out, and that's what we've got to work to. So potentially from March 2026 there is going to be an additional container which will be paper and card, which we need to look at and see how we're going to work that into collection services.
So when we purchase vehicles in the future, we've got to take that into account, that things may change, or it might be, the variations of, we've got to be knowing where we're going with this one. Thank you.
Yeah, so just on that, timing for Thurrock is ideal because the recycling fleet is due for renewal within the next 18 months. So obviously when we're looking at what we need to do to deliver the new service, the fleet provision will be top of the list of what we need to provide. Make sure we get the right vehicles in.
Councillor Hurrell.
Thank you. Yeah, just on that note, residents are going to love that, another bin. But we won't mention it until after May. Right. Contaminated recycling, mainly in flats. What do we do about that? Is there a process that we... Well, just answer the question, please. Sorry.
This is I won't use the word problem, this is a challenge all over the country with flats recycling. So the flats recycling in Thurrock is relatively new in its infancy. I know the bins have been in there for probably just over a year or so now. And I'll be honest, I don't think anything's been done to monitor how that recycling is going. So we're in the process, so we've rolled out the food waste to domestic households, and the next phase of that, which we're working on at the moment, is putting food waste into flats, which we need to do by March 2026. And what I've said to the team and the recycling officer is a part of that mobilisation of that food waste, we need to then attack again the recycling at the flats. So it will be a dual-prong approach, if you like, in terms of reinforcing, or rolling out the new food waste service and reinforcing the recycling. And that means that not just engaging landlords and housing associations, but also engaging residents and having meetings with the resident associations and finding out what the challenges they're facing and why they might not be recycling. But it's going to be a part of the flats food waste programme.
Thanks for that. I think that will be a challenge as well. Yeah, I live in social housing myself, and we've got an elderly lady who lives at the top floor, so how she's going to be expected to carry these all downstairs and that, I'm not sure, but we'll see. One other question. You said we're saving money recycling fortnightly. Does it impede on the improvement, though, of recycling? Because other councils, although they're doing fortnightly, you said, or I believe you said that we're getting better, but they're getting better quicker, sort of thing. So the recycling of fortnightly, does it? Can we make it better?
We can make it better by doing more communications and more engagement with residents, so they understand, what they should be recycling and what they can recycle. We've got some new initiatives coming on as a part of the budget savings for next year that obviously were at Scrutiny, I think late last month. And one of those is, for instance, a doorstep recycling service. And that will take away the need for people to go to the HWRC, and also will increase recycling at the curbside and save materials going into the black bin, or people putting the wrong material into the blue bin. Because people look at recycling packaging, for instance, they see a recycling logo and they think it can be recycled, and they'll put it in the recycling bin, and that's the type of thing that can cause contamination. So I think we need to be clearer on exactly what, we've got quite an extensive list, an A to Z online, which I forget how many items, it's 281 different items on it. We just need to be clear. I don't think the two-weekly cycle affects material. I think the fact that simpler recycling legislation is now targeting paper and card, because that's what the industry has said is where we're losing benefit, and that we can gain more from taking that out the stream, and that will improve the quality. There'll be more demand for it. It'll drive up market. It'll bring us a revenue. Everything else that's in there, your cans, your plastics, and your glass. It doesn't matter if it sits in there for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. It's not going to degrade the quality. And if 240 litre bin isn't enough for someone because they produce that much, obviously ideally we want waste minimisation, but there might be reasons why they can't minimise their waste. They might have a lot of people in a household. Then they can always go through the process and apply for a second recycling bin.
One last comment, really. Like I said, I live in social housing myself, and on the recycling bins, it says no plastic bags. So you take it out of the plastic bag, you're recycling, you tip it in there, and then you've got to put the plastic bag in a waste bin. Well, lots of people just don't. They just get the bag, dump it in there. But that's just normal, that's human nature, so.
That will be addressed in 2027. So the final part of the simpler recycling legislation is from March 2027. Excuse me. Plastic film will have to be collected as part of the mix, and carrier bags would be included in that.
Just to come back to the sort of thin plastics, because the supermarkets take them now, don't they? I don't know if you're, but I don't know if certainly. Well, Tesco certainly does. I think a lot of them do now. Yeah, so I don't know if that could be part of the education maybe, to just encourage people to, if they use the big supermarkets, to dispose of their plastics that way. So I thought,
Yeah, we can certainly look at that to include that in the comms. It's like batteries. A lot of supermarkets also take household batteries, and we need to be helping them promoting that as well, because that's going to take it out of our waste stream. Yeah.
Yes, well, recycling is on mine. I did threaten Claire once with I would bring in a bag of, I've got one at home ready in case I ever have to do it, that is this recyclable, is this, and I still have to educate my wife on whether there's a window on it, and you got to, and it is, nobody actually knows, and that's where we do lack education. Do we do enough on education to the residents of, because it's just like pizza boxes. I've done this one with Claire. Can you put a pizza box? I would say no, because it's contaminated with oil. Some councils take them, some don't, and we don't know. So that is one thing. The other, you've already said, I think, paper and card, is that going to be sellable waste? So we're going to have an income from that? Yeah. Great. And the other thing we're talking about earlier, I'd like to get the view from the other councillors. Since whatever's changed since, well, Ed has come in, and I don't get any more complaints about bins. I don't get people phoning me every Monday saying my bin's not been emptied, my bin's not been emptied. I deal with a lot of commercial waste, and that is excellent. That is, you phone them, or I'm on ad hoc, and you phone them the next day. So I have seen a dramatic change, and I don't know if that's just my side or all over, but for me it's been unbelievably different. And my Mondays now, I don't mind waking up on a Monday because I've not got that big list saying it's not been done. Go to that road, go to that road. So I like the strategy report's fine, and whatever you're doing, just keep doing it, please. Councillor Sisterton.
I'll back that up. I get very few complaints on a Friday, and that's only since May. And when I first started, I would get complaints, but hardly any now.
Are you saying it's only because May since the election? Councillor Hurrell.
Yeah, I'll second that. We get, I've heard nothing at all about the food caddies for about the last 3 or 4 months. Yeah. There's no complaints at all about bins. You get the odd one that's missed, but it's rare, very rare now. So it is definitely improving, yeah, so that's good.
Councillor Shinnock.
I get reports of missed bins quite often, but over Trafford 100 where I am, there's quite a lot of small turnings and cars block the area, so that might be the reason they get missed.
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. Page 106, about sort of halfway down. Might be quicker for me to just read it very quickly. It says households have traditionally been provided with 240 litre wheeled bins for refuse, but now new builds are now going to be supplied with the 180 litre bins. Can you just kind of briefly explain to me the science behind it? Because it says it's in an effort to reduce, for people to actually reduce their wastage, but how does that actually work? Because I figure a family lives wherever they live, they're still going to develop or create as much waste as where they lived previously. And about this new builds, I'm just not quite sure how that works.
The key is in what you just said, I think, in terms of how you're categorising waste. They are creating waste, but how much of that is actually recyclable? So when you do sort of waste composition, I wasn't here when this strategy was written, but where we've worked in places before and we've put smaller bins in, you look at sort of waste composition analysis, you do some analysis of what's actually in the bin, so you take a target, a sample across the borough, look at the demographics and take a sample of what's in the bins. And you come out with a sort of percentage of how much of that can actually be recycled, and then you can calculate that back into what kind of litrage. And I think for Thurrock, from memory, I think we've got 180, but I think it came out about 140. So there is extra capacity in theory. And you're right, there are households that do produce more waste. not necessarily more general waste, it might be more recycling. But where there are larger families or, there are different circumstances where more waste is being produced and they are filling that bin, then we can review that and, a bigger bin or a second bin is available. But when you do start looking in people's bins, I've been to a couple of places in Thurrock over the last 6 months or so, and they said, I'm absolutely recycling everything that I can. And when you go there, there's loads of stuff that I'm talking about obvious stuff like plastic bottles, glass bottles, cans in their general waste bin that can be just moved into the blue bin.
Councillor Hurrell?
Yeah, it says in that same paragraph, right at the very end of it, replacement bins are chargeable. Now, on a funny side to this, because of the boundary change, I've actually got one that's going to be in my walls now. Wasn't yesterday. And it's got a massive split in it. So if they're damaged, do they still have to pay for a rechargeable one?
If it's damaged during collection by the operatives, no. If it's damaged by the resident or while it's in the resident's property, then the resident would have to pay for it.
Right, so the resident might have had it 10, 15 years, and in time the things general wear and tear, but they've still got to pay if it is damaged. Yeah.
Not if it's general wear or tear. If it's split because it's 10, 15 years old, obviously, and the resident tells us that, we can just go out and just make a quick assessment and just say, yeah, that needs replacing.
I would say if you've got a resident that needs a bin, buy it from if you're over 65, because some bizarre reason it costs less to buy a bin if you're over 65 than under 65, which never ever got my head around. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. I noticed about a month ago the refuge collectors sometimes do check the bins before they empty them, and the refuge collector looked in the blue bin and there was clearly something he wasn't happy with. So he left that bin. That was my neighbour's bin, and then just carried on about their business. Didn't catch up with the neighbour that day, caught up with the neighbour a few days later and said, I witnessed the refuge collector, there was something in your bin he clearly wasn't happy with. The neighbour was not aware of that. All they was aware of is that the bin didn't get collected. They then phoned up the council and the council come along the next day, no questions asked, emptied the bin. So if there was contamination, the next day they come and collected it anyway. I wondered what the communication is around what happens if a refuge collector finds contamination, because you would have thought a knock on the door, but at the same time the resident might not even be there. So it is quite complex, because obviously the refuge collectors are busy, they've got to get on with their business. So how does the system work if contamination is found? Thank you.
So there's 4 different bin tags, if you like, with different messages on for different waste streams. So for recycling, what the operative should have done is on checking and identifying that there's contamination, he would tag the bin, which notifies the residents, goes on the handle so it's easy to see. And it'll ask the resident to either take the waste out, resort it, or if you need any further information, direct them to the website. But what the operative should then do, the collector, he will notify the driver of the number of the house. He normally calls it out, and then when the driver next stops, he inputs it onto, they've got an in-cab system for reporting various things. That's what then feeds through to the back office. So the guys in the back office know that hasn't been collected, and that's where I was talking about the heat maps. That's where that information is driven from. So that they can produce a report to us to tell us that's been missed. Now, what should happen and what we're working towards with the contact centre have got access to that system. So what should happen is that by the time that resident realises that something's wrong, the contact centre are already aware. And when they go, either call the contact centre or go online, it should then be able to update the resident with the reason they haven't had their waste collected and what to do.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Paul. As recycling gets more complicated, and we're talking about, should we say, education, has there ever been an idea of, say, having a programme to go around schools? Because I think if you went to the schools, start as young as you can, and explain to children the different variations of recycling, they will probably take it home to their parents and be more engaged. Thank you.
So the recycling officer that I spoke to has got a draft waste minimisation plan, and there's schools outreach is a part of that. So we will be going out to schools, as we did, as I understand, years ago, we used to, but for various reasons we don't anymore, but we will be going back into schools for exactly those reasons you're talking about, Councillor.
Councillor Day.
Can you be clear, the operators, they're allowed to look in people's dustbins? 'Cause
Yeah, they do. They don't dig down. They'll just make an observation, because not only are they looking for contamination, they're making sure there's nothing, like industrial waste or, thank you, hazardous waste in the containers before they pick them up, which will obviously then contaminate the whole load, but could be a health and safety issue to the crews or the guys at the MRFs and the plants where it goes to.
Yeah, I was just wondering with my colleague here, what was the motivation for them looking into your neighbour's dustbin? I mean, were they looking in everybody's dustbin down that street?
No, I think it was random. It seems like I think there's a good system in place there. It might have been the operative verbally told the driver. I definitely didn't see a tag go on, but yeah, I think as long as, you know, moving forwards, there's just make sure that system's in place. Yeah, it could just be the tag was missed, but yeah, no, I think it is important that bins are checked. You've got to check them. So yeah, I've got no concerns with that whatsoever, and mine was checked as well. So yeah, it may have just been a random check.
Okay.
If the likelihood is that you mentioned, Councillor, that the crew went back the next day and collected, the likelihood is then that the operative didn't leave the tag, because if that happens, that's on us, and we need to go back and rectify it. So that's what we do.
Yeah, hopefully it was just a one-off. I'm sure it was. As I said, I'd like yourselves. I think the system's worked really well. So yeah, just onwards and upwards.
Councillor Sisterson.
Yeah, thank you. There's been in the news issues of batteries from maybe vapes and things causing fires in refuse bins. Now, I don't know the truth of that. You know, it's been news stories, and I don't know if that's been an issue in Thurrock. And again, would that be an education issue that should be addressed?
It is a genuine issue. I've been in this industry a long time, and over the last 10 years, fires in the back of dust carts have been quite regular. In Thurrock, I don't think we've had, well, I don't want to tempt fate, but I don't think we've had one since I've been here anyway. But it is a genuine issue. I know disposable vapes are being outlawed later next year. I am looking at options around curbside battery recycling. And like I say, we just need to push on the comms as well, what they do at the supermarkets in the meantime, and HWRC. But there are potentially options for sort of adding curbside batteries to the service at some point in the future.
Councillor Hurrell.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, page 114, objective 5, to become a council that sends zero waste to landfill. Are other councils on target to do this? And what's the timeline for this? Because it seems very unlikely to happen soon. That's how I'll put it. Thanks.
You say it's utopia, and we're only sending 0.14% of our total waste to landfill.
Right. First time I think I've ever been, they've had 10 happy councillors who have got that very little to complain about. So that's great. So now we note the waste strategy has been reviewed, updated to reflect legislation and operational changes. Are we all happy with this? Yeah. Great stuff. Now we agreed that when there was a break we would bring on Councillor Spate's call in. So if everybody's happy with that, we will proceed with that. Do we need a 5-minute break to let Councillor Spate get ready? Councillor Spate, I've made an... Sorry, Councillor Spate, you've got time to get ready.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, waste and recycling policy. I'll take it that members have managed to read through the proposed policy. The new waste and recycling collection policy does consolidate various pre-existing policies, frameworks and legislative guidelines into one comprehensive document. It brings some clarity, compliance and alignment to Thurrock's 2031 municipal waste strategies. They do sort of go hand in hand. I think we need one to support in delivering the other. The updated policy serves as an essential component of the 2031, municipal waste strategy. The policy is rooted in fundamental waste policies from 2008, the waste strategy and recent 2024 savings business cases and existing legislation such as the Environment Act 2021 and simpler recycling that comes out the back of that. I think by promoting clarity, compliance and flexibility, the collection policy empowers the community and the council to work collaboratively towards a cleaner, more sustainable future while remaining adaptable to evolving regulations. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Are there any questions on that? Seems you got off lightly on that one, so that's good. Councillor Spate, we're all ready for you.
I doubt it, Councillor. Right, okay, firstly, I would like to say thank you to those that deemed it worthwhile having submitted the call-in and allowing me this opportunity to bring what I think is quite a serious matter to this committee's attention. And there are wider implications than just this subject matter. I think there are wholesale issues about procurement, about how we manage our service acquisition and what. But this actually encapsulates a lot of my concerns. And I've been very concerned for a number of years about the relationship that this council has with two companies, Phi Capital and Topland Olympus. And I still believe that at some point in time, there will be, not quite on the proportions of solar farm problems, but we are talking about tens and tens and tens of millions of pounds here that I'll be long dead and buried when people are still having to start to pay all that off, and it worries me greatly. But to look at some specific point, and I don't know, Chair, whether it might be helpful if I could just ask a question of somebody who might or may not from the Office of Cohort be able to give me a little bit of advice. It's in relation to the Memorandum of Understanding between the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and the Council in relation to the purchase of these 10 properties and the grant funding that is, and I would also say thank you to the government for the actual making of a substantive amount of money available to put some new houses into Thurrock. That is very, very welcome. But there is reference in this Memorandum of Understanding, and because I'm quite thick, I maybe have not got the full gist of it all, but it specifies in here that it is acquisition of new homes. Now, whether that's an option, but it says the MLC, the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, has accepted the Council's plan to provide 10 homes, the total delivery target under LAHFR3, of which 10 homes shall be new homes, brackets, the new homes delivery target. And they would count, the government will bring forward the aforementioned £1.8 million. And the total allocation, and again, makes reference to new homes uplift. So a new home is defined as a property that will be delivered in financial years 24-25, 25-26 as a direct new development and off the shelf new build property. That didn't really come across at all at Cabinet when this was discussed, and the impression was that Phi Capital would, or simply Phi, whichever one of their brand names you wish to use, would go out and find some new properties for Thurrock Council that might be in need of refurbishment or whatever. So I don't know whether somebody could offer me a little bit of clarity as to whether there is a provision that we actually should be looking at brand new build homes or whether we're looking at second-hand properties, for want of a better word, if I may, Chair.
You may, before somebody answers that, well, that's how I saw it, but speaking at other meetings, I've been told that we could possibly be buying back leasehold properties that we once owned by the council, now we're buying them back. So I thought that we was just buying, like, finding off-the-shelf houses and not new houses. But I'll let somebody
It'll be a
answer
very
that.
simple answer.
I'll let somebody answer that question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the grant funding was provided on the proviso that you either or. So it was either brand new builds that you build yourself, which wasn't particularly financially feasible on the numbers they originally gave us that they were likely to provide, or off the shelf. So we went for the off the shelf option, and that was what was agreed as part of that memorandum of understanding.
Okay, so sort of my idea of a new homes is that you could trot down to your local Persimmon site or wherever it might be and say, we'll have that one, that one, that one, and that one. They're brand new homes, and we'll buy them. And when you buy new, you always buy relatively cheap because it's a future investment. So, you know, I mean, I'm trying to get my head around this whole project. But thanks, Chris, for that clarification. If it's a mix and match, then that explains it. In terms of my call-in, and I'll run through the reasons that that I put in my call-in that were accepted as valid enough for me to be here this evening. And I welcome the fact that the council is planning 10 new properties, but as I said in my preface, I just cannot see how this is being achieved as best value for this council. Again, there's a slight difference between some of the paperwork and what was said, but it's probably gobbledygook. But the plan is, for anybody who doesn't understand it, we're going to buy 6 two-bedroom homes, 3 three-bedroom homes, and 1 4-bedroom unit, which is 10 properties in total. And we're getting 1.8 million from the government, and they've kindly allowed us to go out and borrow another substantive amount of money, which takes the pot to, and I'm jumbling up a little bit, around about 3 million quid. We're talking about just slightly under that, but it's in that. So we've got to find, as I say, 6 two-bed homes. There's no clarification about what they can be. They just have to be habitable and serviceable and in Thurrock. And the same with the 3 beds and the 1 4-bed, possibly again. Now, me being a really simple, thick person, I literally went a couple of days after the cabinet meeting when I got my head around it. Opened up my laptop, went to Rightmove, or it might have been Zoopla, other brand names I'm sure are available, and I just went on the Thurrock property market, and I was able to find properties that were fit, were on the market, were ready for sale, that didn't need any work doing on them, and when I added them up, my fag packet estimate of just adding up the cost price of those houses was substantially less. And I didn't go to the bottom end. I literally picked in the middle of the market. So where I got an average price, I would find the top price for a 3-bedroom and the bottom price for a 3-bedroom and split the difference. And we were way, 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 way below the sort of money that we were talking about to acquire those properties. So much so that we could have probably bought 12. I then looked at the amount of money that was that we're talking about, because the way this thing works is we Simplify provide, and actually I think they only provide a portal now, so I think we actually probably have to do a bit of the legwork as well. But Simplify identify properties that we can buy. Well, you know, as I say, that's what Rightmove do, that's what Zoopla do in my way of thinking. And they will come in and they'll identify these properties. They'll say, that's one you should buy. Now, the way the current system works, where Fire Capital are involved in properties, they then go in and organise any refurbishment, repairs or whatever that needs doing, and they do the work, and we effectively pay Fire Capital for doing all that as well. That doesn't work in this instance. Fire, as I understand it, as I've been reassured, are simply acting as effective estate agents. They're not, and they're also taking care of the conveyancing. So they're a mix of conveyancer and they're a mix of estate agent. And for that service, they're charging us round about, I think it's £21,000 a property. Now we're talking 10 properties, so you're over 200,000 quid there. Now, I don't know the average wage for a paralegal working at one of our local estate agents, but I suspect it's substantially less than that. And I actually looked up the average cost of conveyancing, and I actually took the time and trouble to write to 3 different online conveyancing firms. And I accept I'm working in a perfect world here, and it's me sat at home. And I got quotes on properties that I identified, and I think the most expensive was 2,300 quid for the actual legal conveyancing documents. So I just do not understand where we get 21,000 quid per transaction from. I just do not understand why we're dealing with FI, why we're there. Somebody's told me, oh, well, it's rules about procurement and we have to do it all over and above board or whatever. Well, let's put a contract. If we have to do it through procurement and we can't do it ourselves, then let's put an advert in the Thurrock Gazette, if it has to be there or whatever, inviting local businesses or in the housing market to tender for the contract to provide us with 10 houses, or even an open-ended contract. Because I'm sure not very far from here down the high street and round the corner, there are some very reputable estate agents who will be delighted to take that work on board, who would employ local people, so we keep the money in the local economy, which is everything that this council is supposed to be doing. But instead, as I say, we've got this bizarre scheme to work with this company that, I'll be quite honest with you, I significantly distrust, and I have had many conversations with the senior housing director, and it's all been explained to me about how marvellous it all is, and I sort of go away and I'm sort of half convinced by the rhetoric, and then I sit down and no, it just doesn't wash. We're dealing with, if you look in the origins of FI, they are government recommended. Well, in this day and age, that probably doesn't mean a great deal, but they are government recommended. But but many of their senior executives and whatever are people who are not UK based. It is a UK registered company, I'll give it that, but its financial partner, Topland, is all offshore. And we're as a part of our wider deal with these two companies, we are going out and dealing with companies that are based offshore. Now, if that isn't putting money of this council at risk in some way, shape or form, then I'll stand drop of York. So, you know, I'm really, really, really concerned about all this. And another argument that came along as to why this was a great scheme and why it wasn't was that 3 of these new properties are going to go to refugee families. And I have no problem with that. I really don't. It's fine. We play our part. And it's not queue jumping. It is what it is. And that's why the government are stepping in and putting the money in. I think that's just commendable, laudable, and I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But then we've got 7 properties that we're going to buy and we're going to fill. And the argument put forward is, well, that's 7 more off our waiting list. Well, with a waiting list of somewhere in the region of upwards of, 7,000 or 5,000, whatever figure you tend to get on whatever day of the week you stick your finger in the air, you know, you're not taking, well, you might technically be taking 7 off the waiting list, but I'll tell you, there'll be 7 more signing up that week to join in. We know as councillors how many people come to us and say, I can't get on the waiting list, you know, I'm bidding for properties, I just feel disenfranchised, I'm not a part of this council. So that don't wash with me at all. The whole thing nodded through, and I do appreciate Cabinet may have had a briefing, may have had a discussion. It went through in about 10 minutes at Cabinet. I was allowed to ask 1 question and no more. And I just felt incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable about the whole process. I don't think there's been enough due diligence. I don't think that there's been enough sound reasoning and questions asked, why are we doing this? I mean, it's very easy to say, well, we're doing it because the government's going to give us 1.8 million. But we've still got to go out and borrow 1.4 million. Thank you, government, for allowing us that privilege. It's a step in the right direction and shows how far we've moved as a council. Great, I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, we're still going to incur debt for 7 houses for Thurrock residents. You know, the 3 are going to come in, fantastic, laudable, all that. So this whole process, as an ordinary bloke who looks at things very straight, you know, and I see things in straight lines, and maybe, you know, I'm far too simplistic for my own good, but I just do not believe that this absolutely works. And the interesting thing is, another of the reasons against it was, it's very complicated in terms of IT and passing things about and whatever. Well, you know, we've got a really impressive new IT director who's coming in, who's looking at the systems that we work at. We're supposed to be moving in the right direction to be self-sufficient. We're supposed to be becoming a better council. We're supposed to be becoming more efficient. We're supposed to be looking after the pennies. I just find this whole process of this just flies in the face of all those laudable ambitions. And that's why I asked it to be called in. That's why I'd ask this committee to ask Cabinet to go back and revisit it with a deep dive and to look at, is there an alternative way we can go with this situation? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Spate. Does anybody want to answer or speak on what Councillor?
First of all, thank you. First of all, Councillor Spate, thank you for the call-in. I think we should do more call-ins, if I'm perfectly honest. But I do think this is a good news story for Thurrock, to bring 10 new homes to Thurrock. One of the main issues for us is been a timeline. The funding became available in March. So we bid for the funding. We were successful in getting 1.8 million, but then a general election was called. That delayed the whole process. The funding wasn't really made available till September. And then it became a real issue around speed because we had to spend this money by March 25. So time was really of an essence. To go through a kind of tender process, as the rules, councils go through tender processes, takes about 6 to 8 months. We don't have that time. In terms of fire being identified as the option, fire was part of a framework, and fire was identified as possibly the best option, was the best option on this particular framework. The 21,000 that Councillor Spate talks about also includes an element of repairs within that. So it's not just, well, they don't necessarily mean they're going to spend all the money on terms of some of those repairs. In terms of FI are a recognised company. They are government approved. They also work with around about 25 other local authorities. So they seem to have a track record, a good track record of working with local authorities. In terms of the borrowing was good in the sense that we've already missed out on 2 opportunities to go for this funding because we could not borrow the money. So we've missed out on an opportunity to get possibly 20 more homes on top of this figure. So it was a really good place to be to get the government to agree to this funding. We had to match fund it by 45%, which is where the borrowing came in. Now, I understand Councillor Spate's argument around the cost. I think in an ideal world, Councillor, I would have liked to have gone and retested the market. And I think, but I don't have the time to do that right now. And I think that's one of the recommendations I would walk away from this and, once we leave here, is we actually go away and retest the market for future work like this. So I think I'll leave it there unless anyone wants to say anything.
Thank you. Just to add, and to second the fact that I completely agree with if we had the time to actually go and procure, given the government's expiry date on the fund, then we'd go back and retest the market, and just to reassure that we would do that for all future schemes such as this. So just to re-emphasise that. The situation we're in now is the government's expectation of delivery. So we could talk about spending money, we've got to deliver by March. The fund has got an expiry date. All local authorities who have got this allocation, not just ours, will be expected to deliver by that given date. If we don't, we simply give the 1.8 million back to government. That's the implication. That's where we're at now. If the council, as an organisation, says, for whatever reason, we can't accept the fact that we've gone through a framework and we've direct awarded through a framework that we've procured to do this, that we don't accept that. And bear in mind, had we gone through a procurement process, that would not have excluded Simplify. They would have gone through the same process as everybody else. And they could have won it through that process in any case. So just to be clear on that, that when you go out to procure, those who are eligible to apply will apply in bid. But in this scenario, we did it through framework, and that was where we ended up. So fundamentally now we are in a situation where the council as an organisation decides that, you know, we can deliver to the government and make traction. If we give the money back, I can almost, through certainty, through having done these kind of schemes in other local authorities, they will not look at Thurrock because we won't have a track record for delivery. So we've got to have a proven track record for delivering in order to attract further funding in the future. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria, as we said the other day, no one's saying that we're going to be put in a corner as to hand this money back, or, you know, because of the procurement process or how long it takes. Realistically, we're looking at it now, it can be, say, 4 or 5 months because we're saying, look for other people, and that takes it up to the end of time, and that money's got to go back. No one wants this. What we're questioning is the process and how long it takes. And what we're saying is this, is that maybe you should have started earlier with your procurement process. And also look at saying to these people, actually, did you just accept that cost that they put forward? Did you not question the costs? Bearing in mind we're watching all our pennies. That's what I think that Councillor Spate is one of these arguments, shall we say.
In response to some of those points, as well as some of those raised by Councillor Spate, we did look at the costs, and the cost schedule that we were given by FI was different to the previous cost schedules that they'd provided for the other project work that they've done for us, where they've got us over 200 units of temporary accommodation. When we compared the two, the actual costs on this project were less than they are as standard costs. And we had a discussion with them around pinch points and how things like conveyancing fees, leasehold surpluses, to try and bring it to a level. The estimates that are in the cost schedule are high point estimates on purpose, because what we try to do is go in high, deliver low, and borrow less. So that's part and parcel of that process. As far as the going to procurement earlier, simply wouldn't have been possible. We didn't know the exact figure we were going to get. In fact, the Memorandum of Understanding figure was different to the initial figure we were suggested that we were going to get by government in March. So we had to wait till we found out what that was. We found out what that was in the end of August. We were then actually given the first tranche in October. To get the report to Cabinet takes at least 3 months. And then we can't procure until we've got Cabinet's okay. So we're then already December, where we are now. There was no method by which we could do that procurement. And in addition to a point that Councillor Hooper made about the procurement timescales, the advice that we've been given by our procurement service is that currently something of this scale, with this expenditure and this level of borrowing, is taking between 8 and 12 months to procure.
Can Councillor Jones come back on that one?
Do you, when you go out to procurement, do you go, say, 3 people? And what I'm talking about is experience in respect of when I had a community grant and I was going out to procurement for lights, Christmas lights. I had to have 3, and it was council that said this, we want 3 quotes. So do you abide by your own rules and offer, you know, go and get 3 quotes, should we say?
I think in terms of procurement, depending on the threshold, so at certain points, so if it's under you know, a certain amount, I don't know, 10,000, then you could get free quotes. There's different triggers for the procurement levels. So that's, you know, with this being 3 million, the procurement process would be a lot more lengthier than if you were just going to go and get something for 10,000. So that's the difference. That's the reason why those thresholds are there, and they take longer because of the threshold.
So you didn't get free quotes?
I can answer that. No, we didn't get 3 quotes because we were, given the time constraints, we were working out of the framework. So we saw the other people within that framework. The framework is a largely IT-based framework, but there are housing providers with their own IT. We looked at the providers that were in there, and given our track record of working with Simplify and the fact that we already had them integrated into our systems, we already had direct links with our officers, and we were confident that they were able to deliver. They were the option that we went for. We have considered the in-house model as well as an option, but it would, given the need to hire staff who are skilled in this area, and then have them working on this project alone for at least a 4-month period. The calculations we've come out with suggest that that would be more expensive than using Simplify.
Sorry, can I bring Helen in for this one, please?
Thank you, Chair. I thought it might be helpful if I come in on the procurement rules. So the Council has, as part of its constitution, the contract procedure rules, which, as my colleagues have said, it sets out, depending on the value of what you're going out for, the process that you have to follow in order to be compliant with the public contract procedure rules. And also, just to state that framework agreements are compliant under the terms of those contract procedure rules.
Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. Just sitting here listening, I don't claim to be an expert at all in this field, although I do feel like I am sort of fairly savvy with property market. So kind of listening to the conversation, and obviously what's been said is kind of rings kind of tiny little alarm bells in my head. You know, I am one of those normal guys on the street, and I do believe people think exactly the same thing. Now, I am listening to obviously experts on the other side, and I have to believe what they're telling me is true, but it just, something about this just doesn't sit right. I mean, there are, I'm sure, as Councillor Spate has said, there are, you know, if a proper search is done, a proper procurement process is done, cheaper properties can be found, probably more, possibly more properties could be purchased. It just sort of doesn't sit right for me, and I'm kind of put my head above the parapet and press the button tonight. Just wanted to get that out there. I actually did pick up early on, and it was obviously covered earlier on. I did actually write down about the loan that we needed to go with the match funded loan. That's been explained, so thank you very much, because obviously I thought we're in a position where we couldn't borrow, and so obviously this has now been explained. I did also pick up straight away, just looking on the graph on page 20, and it's the total grant refurbishment, 21k. It works out for each example, and I was just curious, really, why the 21k applies to a 2, 3, and a 4-bedroom, because refurbishment costs probably would vary. I'm in the middle of a 2-year refurbishment on a home, and I do know it's virtually impossible to keep the costs. And on that, you know, the 21k, is that fixed, or does that rise? You know, in a circumstance where more money needs to be put into this whatever project, where does that come from?
What I'd say is, first of all, the refurbishment comes out of a section of the grant rather than the borrowing. So that's paid directly out of the grant funding. There's a specific pot within the grant funding for that, as well as some of the conveyancing costs and other legal issues. As far as the 21k comes in, again, we're using high-level estimates. I've done a secondary estimate which uses a lower figure on an average that we thought it potentially could cost of about £15,000, and it comes out at very little difference between the two figures. As I say, the refurbishment, though, is coming directly out of the grant. It's not coming out of our borrowing. The borrowing is match funding in order to actually purchase the properties themselves.
Okay, I mean, like I say, I'm not an expert. I've listened to explanations, and I do understand the time constraints and the deadlines, etc., etc., etc. But I do feel, obviously, if we're in this position again, we might approach it in a completely different way, somewhere, in some way that the man on the street can actually look at it and say they've done their best, you know, because this does smell a little bit off to me, to be honest, but we are where we are. I do understand that.
If I just very briefly come back on that, I have committed to Councillor Hooper that after this we will do a soft market test so that we're prepared for events in the future, so that we can then do proper procurement, do it more quickly.
Councillor Green?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to look at the actual calling. There's an alternative proposal about doing the acquisition internally. Is there a chance of this?
At the moment, we don't consider that we have the skill base within the department. We do have a skill base that's capable of undertaking refurbishment. We did it under the old ARAP scheme for the Afghan resettlements. The actual identification of the properties, the pre-post inspections, the schedules of works, the identifying properties that would need less works, the doing of the surveys, the various schedules and various other things. We don't currently have people who can do that internally. Even our internal legal department outsource their conveyancing and surveys and searches. And so we would actually have to, just to give you a flavour of some of the calculations that I've been doing in the background, Simplify state that they would give us 8 to 10 officers, let's call them, dedicated to any of the projects that we currently have ongoing. So we'd have 8 to 10 of their officers, which is subsumed in the cost that we're paying to them, and the cost that obviously they're working at scale because they have the 20-odd other councils that are currently working with them on very similar projects, in fact a number of them on the same project. Our staffing costs for 4 months at the lowest level of the band that we currently pay for a private rented sector officer, which would be a similar role, for those 4 months would come to £46,000 for the 2 beds, nearly £23,000 for the 3 beds, and nearly £8,000 for the 4 bed. That's on top of all the other costs. So that's where that extra layer of it being more expensive comes from than using FI.
Councillor Green?
Thank you, Chair. And with fire, so if we don't go ahead with this today, we are at extreme risk of having to give that money back and losing this whole project.
Yeah, in fact, the first return has to be completed by February because they give it in 2 tranches. So we have to do a return by February to say we've used some of the first tranche and actually completed on some purchases by that point. Otherwise, they won't give us the second tranche and they'll take the first tranche back.
Councillor Green?
And I just want to finish off. So with that, Chair, I don't think we've got any other option but to reject this calling, as we're going to end up losing this money and the porting housing towards the Thurrock borough.
Councillor Harrell?
Yeah, I was going to ask 2 things. Has PI worked with other councils? We just said 20-odd other councils. So, how long have they been around doing this type of work? And are we only receiving the government funding because of PI? Is there others out there we could have worked with?
FI have been working with this authority for at least 3 years on our temporary accommodation acquisition programme, hence why we thought they'd be a good partner, because we've had good results. Yes, they do work with a number of others. They're currently working with people like Chelmsford and Redbridge on this particular project. The government money wasn't dependent on us partnering with anyone, but the general consensus from the other boroughs that I've spoken to is that most people are doing that, but it wasn't a requirement of the...
Thank you. Right. So one thing... oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Green that as things stand, it sounds like we have to go forward, and it's a good news story that we're going to get the extra homes, so we can't knock that. But I do welcome the, procurement process going forward. So we're not in this position again. So we're very clear where we stand on those expenses going forward. And then just finally, I'd like to know where we are with this and have properties been identified and what stage are we at?
In preparation for this, given that Simplify are already identifying properties for us as part of our general acquisition programme, they have been looking around, but not formalising anything or doing anything firm, because obviously we need authority for them to do that. So they've just added it to what they're currently doing to have a little look around, but they haven't identified specific properties for it.
Can you say that again? We're giving away £200,000 that we don't need to, and we haven't identified the properties. I spoke to a leading estate agent. I had a meet, because I knew this was coming, with a leading estate agent, a leading conveyancer, and they both said if you give them £200,000 to do that, which are given to this agency, they will clear it in 6 weeks. And they will go to a party and celebrate, clink their glasses and laugh at Thurrock Council, because this is an incredible amount of money. And you're threatening us saying we're going to lose the money, but we are actually losing a value of a house at least, and we're spending £200,000 on conveyancing, and you're saying that's a good deal. That is a shocking deal. It's just unbelievably bad. And I'm told it's a tendering process. We have to give money away. It don't matter if you're a bankrupt company, but this company are actually laughing at us, aren't they, all the way to the bank. It's shocking, do you see? I just can't see how you can pat yourself on the back and say it's good. It's terrible.
If I could just address some of that. I mean, obviously, yeah, we appreciate the concerns of members, and as we say, we have committed to do that market testing in the future. What we should make clear is that the £200,000 isn't conveyancing costs. The £200,000 is the total cost of a long list of services that Simplify provide. It's not just find a property, conveyance a property. They do all the pre and post inspection, they do all the works, they do all the schedules of works, they do all the management of all the solicitors, they do all the surveys, they do all the searches, they do quite a number of things outside of the conveyancing and identification field, and they provide the IT for us to be able to monitor those acquisitions and properly contract manage their acquisition.
But they haven't actually done any work, have they? So they're actually, you haven't found the properties. I can find you an estate agent that could do it quicker tomorrow and save you £200,000. How can that be? How can you justify that?
Chair, can I just...
Helen, can I bring Helen on first?
Just on that point, Chair, about the implementation of the decision. So Cabinet took this decision on the 13th of November. There's obviously then the period that the decision has to sit, following which there has been this call-in that's come to committee tonight, obviously with it then going back to Cabinet next week. So the decision has been taken, but officers haven't been able to implement that decision because of the process that's been going through at the moment. So I just thought I should flag that.
So will we agree that this decision, and maybe we're going late, is actually cost us an absolute fortune, but never need to be? At least we've got to say we're going to learn from our mistake, because this can't ever happen again. You bring in local estate agents, so they'll get you 12 houses, and they'll give you 150 grand change, and that's what we have to be looking at, surely. This is shocking business. I keep saying private sector and public sector, oceans apart, because this would never, ever happen if you was answerable to shareholders. It's only because you're not answerable to shareholders, they just say, spend 200,000, give it away, and let this agency have a party on it. Christmas party's going to be great, isn't it? So.
Steve, did you want to go first? Okay, no, thank you, Chair. Apologies there, Councillor Diard. Right, so I do think that Councillor Spate has put forward a very good argument, and actually I do think the officers and the portfolio holders have defended their reasons as to why we're here. I do think, look, ultimately, the system is clearly an issue. If the government hands out a council, you know, they're very quick to complain if councils run into financial difficulty, yet they put us under a huge amount of pressure almost to rush these decisions. So if you do vote in favour of these 10 homes this evening, I understand why you do that, because you're worried that we could potentially lose you know, 10 homes for our residents. But could you say with confidence, and given how much we've had our fingers burnt over the last few years, that this is a cracking deal and, you know, this is not going to unravel on or blow up in our faces in the future? I don't think you can, but I see why you'd want to try and support this proposal. So ultimately, the other option is obviously to play it safe and say, actually, Cabinet, take the risk, look at this again. It is incredibly expensive. We're not reinventing the wheel here. What we're trying to do is just very quickly purchase some properties for our residents. This idea that, don't worry, next time we'll go out to procurement, well, realistically, it should have happened already. This decision was made on the 30th of November. It's now the 1st, or it's now early December, and it puts us in an incredibly difficult situation. So the decision in front of us this evening, if you want to secure these 10 homes, you can vote for that, but I don't think with confidence you can say that this is a cracking deal, or you can urge with caution and say, look, Cabinet, go back and re-examine this. And you know, we have been told in the last 12 months, 18 months, we've been dragged in. You know, don't be so quick to listen to officer recommendations. You know, you scrutinise those officers, and if they don't come back to you with right answers, then you know, you shouldn't be supporting stuff with confidence. So for me, I get it. It is tough, but there is an alternative proposal, and I think if we're not 100% satisfied, it's a case of going back to Cabinet and saying, look, let's just make sure you've done your homework here. I don't think we should be under too much pressure here with this. It is a tough decision, but I'll urge with caution. Thank you.
Well, can I, after 10, are any of you being able to go back to your residents and say this is a cracking deal and we've done well? Has anybody will go back and say we've done really well on this and we're happy?
Chair, do you think that's appropriate to be asking that question in your position as chair?
Sorry?
Do you think that's appropriate to be asking that position as chair?
Yeah, I want to know if all 10 of you will go back and say to your residents who pay their wages especially, and say, is this a good deal?
The grandstanding this evening is unbelievable.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. As a former buyer of IT equipment in the old days, I used to spend regularly over £100,000. And as the amount of money you spend goes up, so you have to follow certain rules and regulations. And I've just been part of a maintenance contract, which we spent probably 6 to 9 months looking at it, all the tenders and following the law on local government purchasing, and we got nowhere at all. So whilst I agree with you that money looked quite high, and yeah, if you could have just done a quick phone call to the local estate agents and done this and done that, as we all could, because we've all bought and sold houses, hopefully, but local government doesn't work like that, and it's you know, yeah. So I'm afraid, although I agree with your sentiments, I'm afraid the call-in won't work for me.
Yes, no, we can't reject 10 houses, can we? But I just thought I'd know that this can never ever happen again, because just all I want to know that we will be more. You don't seem to have done any due diligence on it. It's just so. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, can I suggest that we've got a time frame here in which we've got to do this, and that's what we're up against. No one wants to lose 10 homes in Thurrock. That if we do accept recommendation 1.1, that maybe we propose that in future when we go out to procurement, we make sure we get free quotes, so we learn by this, and so we're going to go forward, be transparent that we look and we get free quotes, so you can come back to us and say, I don't think this is a good deal, but we've got a time frame and we don't want to lose this. So if I can put that could be added to that recommendation. I don't know if that's the right way, but there you go. Thank you.
Councillor Green. Oh.
Apologies. No, just to address that point, obviously, I mean, as we say, I've committed to Councillor Hooper that we will do some soft market testing that will provide for us the level of interest and the kinds of costings that other companies are doing in the market at this point, and that will help us to inform further procurement, which of course will go along procurement regulations and lines, and we will comply with that entirely. I just wanted to make one other small point, which is that while we're looking at the costs of this, and obviously there have been comments made about we're getting 10 homes and only 7 of them are going to be used for non-Afghan resettlement, and that's a drop in the ocean. If we actually look at the 2-bedroom units that we buy here, which are all going to be part of that temporary accommodation and social housing cohort, if we were to have to use private temporary accommodation, which we are doing more and more, causing larger and larger financial pressures, for a year, those 4 2-beds would cost us in the region of £22,000. So that, if you're looking at this, that's, sorry, I think I've misunderstood this calculation. Oh yeah, so for one of the 2 beds is £22,100. So if you're looking at this, then there are hundreds and thousands of pounds worth of cost avoidance and saving that are provided by the provision of these 7 homes.
How much of the loan, though, would we are paying out for? We're obviously paying for the loan. What will the loan cost us on that? The 1.5 million we're going to borrow. Getting interest free, are we?
We can come back to you on that. I mean, we've not got the exact amount there, but I think the other thing here that Councillor Kelly, the point that Councillor Kelly made about government funding in general, they tend to be very, very tight time frames, and you go to any local authority, they're under the same constraints. So if members could speak to government about their time frames for allocations of funding, that would actually give us that length of time. And this is not a Thurrock problem, this is a local authority and government allocation problem. So not making excuses in any way, shape or form, but we are working constantly in a very strict time frame, which, you know, that aside, we do absolutely, just to reiterate again, make the note on the need to go to procurement and test the market.
So just, we've had a loan, but we don't know how much it's going to cost us. Is that what you're saying? We don't know what interest we're paying. It could be more than the savings that they're talking about. So,
to clarify, we won't have the loan yet because we haven't had it agreed. And so to clarify, we haven't had the loan yet because we haven't had it agreed by the various committees. We would only know how much we're paying back for that once we know what the PWLB interest rate is at that moment.
Mr. Shinnock.
Yeah, I'm mindful to agree this, but as Councillor Jones said, we should take note for in future that we have a better setup. You know, we can't throw away money like this, you know. That's why.
Councillor Harrell.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm really struggling with this because if it goes back to Cabinet, can we still complete this in the time process? Can it be completed by March?
The feeling is that we would be able to do it if we prioritise it with Simplify. They're confident that they can get us these properties, at least the first tranche spent significantly enough for us to pass first tranche, and then they'll be able to cover the rest by the end of March.
Councillor Harrell.
Yeah, so the question I said was, not being funny, but if it went back to Cabinet to be decided again, back to Cabinet for reconsideration, sorry, that's the word, we could still do this by March if they agreed it then, because obviously Cabinet won't do it tomorrow, obviously, so could we do this in a time frame?
I think as we mentioned earlier, time is of the essence in terms of delivery of the time we've got to deliver. So it is up to the organisation. The longer this takes, the less likely we're able to deliver by that time frame. That's all I'll say there.
Councillor Sisterton.
I think maybe the question would be, would we have time to go out to tender? And if we definitely haven't got time to go out to tender, then there's no point calling it back in my point of view.
The answer to that would be no, we won't have time to go to tender.
Councillor Green.
Thank you, Chair. Coming off the back of what Councillor Jones said about adding free quotes on the next time, can we ask Helen to come in if we're allowed to do it in this setting? Because wouldn't that be changed to our procurement rules as a council?
Helen, can you answer that, please?
Sorry, can I just ask for clarification? Is this about the idea of the 3 quotes? So under the council's procurement rules, 3 quotes is appropriate, but only where it's certain levels of contract. So if it was a contract, sorry, I've got them open in front of me. If you just bear with me 1 second. So, for example, if you were going out for a service or supply that's under £25,000, it would be fine to go out and get 1 written quote in advance. If you're looking at something that's £25,000 to £74,999, that's when you'd look to 3 written quotes. If you're going above that process, that's when you get into having to have a competitively advertised tender in accordance with advice from procurement services and legal services and finance. If you're going over another threshold, which is as the rules stand at the moment, 214,000. That's when you have a full competitive process under the public contract regulations. So it would very much depend on the level of the contract that you're going out for as to which is the appropriate process for you to follow in order to comply with the contract procedure rules.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Harrell.
So did we follow process this time?
Yes, so my understanding from colleagues in housing is that it was an appointment under a framework, and frameworks are an appropriate method of going out for tender pursuant to our contract procedure rules.
Anybody else? Councillor Dye.
Well, I think first we should congratulate Councillor Spake for digging into this and uncovering what all of us here feel is not acceptable. But on the other hand, in snooker terms, we're snookered. Let's face it. And so from that point of view, I think we should vote it through with the caveats that Councillor Jones is proposing, and hope that that does get looked at in the future. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that, Councillor Dye. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. I think, sorry, did you have something there? Sorry, cheers. Yeah, look, I think ultimately, I think we've gone through the debate phase. I've said my piece. I think councillors have said their piece. I think we're coming to the end of this particular item. Look, ultimately, it's open-driven scrutiny. It's a recommendation. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not blocking the project. It's up to the administration what they do with what we recommend. I think it's been rushed. There's an alternative recommendation. You go with instinct, or you go with the security of the 10 homes. I understand why you'd go with the security of the 10 homes. Everything we've been told in the last 12 to 18 months is make sure your homework's been done, and it's been rushed. So I'll go with the alternative proposal. I'm not sure whether the numbers are there to support that, so we make a judgment call on that one, Chair, when you go to the vote. I've got nothing more to add. Thank you.
Yes, well, basically, the procurement system for the government, you don't have to like it, do you? But you have to apply it, which I see. And I would think if you walk out here and have a little chat, say it's a terrible system, but that's the system we have to go by. And we're going to run out of time because red tape and nonsense, because we do know that if you went to a estate agent tomorrow, they'd tie up 6 weeks, but the system doesn't allow this. Is private sector against public sector, isn't it? And your hands are tied. Everybody can see that, so I don't think anybody's going to like it, but we can't risk losing 10 houses, but as long as we get a guarantee that we are going to do some real super due diligence. And can I ask Ellen, could we have got some great estate agents who we know would beat those prices. Is there like a way that we could maybe bring them in for an interview and say, could you want to go on the tender list? Because we want to use local business, and we don't. Why do we want money to go offshore when we've got great companies in Thurrock? So that, to me, it's going. It's not even staying in the countries. It's going somewhere else. So could we bring in a local estate agent, say, this is what we do. Can we go on your tendering process?
Councillor Ben, I'll take that away and speak to procurement colleagues about it. I think for the purpose of this meeting, of course, it is of course open to local businesses to tender when we go out for our tender contracts. But obviously what we need to do, as I've said a couple of times during this meeting, is just making sure that we comply with our contract procedure rules. But I certainly will take that away and speak to procurement colleagues.
Yeah, and just to add to that, as I say, the soft and hard market testing that we're going to do after this, even before we've got any other project in the future, we'll be happy to include local businesses in that.
Lucy?
Yeah, just quickly. I think Councillor Watson wants to say a few words, but as chair, it's up to you, it's your discretion whether or not Councillor Watson can speak.
Councillor Watson's always welcome to say a few words.
I can say no. Thank you. The government will always put things through at the last minute. They always do. This is round 3. Thurrock didn't have the opportunity to go into round 1 and 2. The reason being is because we didn't have the money. And the second reason being is because we ran out of time. Now, the figures that Chris gave you was based on temporary accommodation for 10 houses on 2 beds. We look at about £145 per night for a 4-bed. So in hindsight, I know what you're saying about the cost of what it is, but we need to also be very clear that the conveyancing, the refurbs, the stamp duty, and every other bit of thing associated comes out the grant. And then 45% of the whole of the house also comes out the grant. So that is even separate to it. So the minimum that we get is even less still. In terms of the actual money itself, until you actually sign the memorandum of understanding, you get it, it may be more than that. And there is opportunities to roll it over as long as we've committed. So where we've got 10 houses going up, you may actually be 12 or 14. I know this is all about whatever that company is called. I know that's what it's all about. But the issue we have as well is I'm absolutely 100% convinced that if we've got good estate agents, come onto a framework and come to it. But the thing is, if you go through a whole procurement on a 3 million plus, as they've said, you are going to be looking at 10, 12 months before we could procure. You're going to be losing money hand over fist. We're already known as a failing council. We're already known for the ones that we just give money away and give money back because we can't deliver. Let's start delivering. Let's start today. Let's start delivering. If you want a procurement framework with small companies, happy to do that. Let procurement take that up and do that and run with it. But at the moment, we haven't got that luxury of time, and I think all the members, including yourself, Chair, understands that as well. Thanks.
Councillor Harrell.
Well, I'm not Councillor Harrell, but, you know.
Sorry, I'm looking at him.
I'm better looking.
Councillor Hooper, sorry.
Right. Can I just say, as the portfolio holder, I listened and heard what everyone said, and I take on board some of the points that Councillor Spate has really made, and that's why I welcomed the call in. And the things I have spoken to officers since then, because I was on a really tight time frame. When I looked at this, I'm going, oh my God, what do I do? Do I risk losing 1.8 million or go with something that's really expensive? But as I'm the current portfolio holder, I promise that I will look at the procurement process again, because I feel that we could get a better deal, but we are where we are. And I just want to be made that very, very clear. And I've already requested officers to look at the market again, so we get this opportunity, we're in a better place.
Oh yeah, can Councillor Spate want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'll just try and summarise briefly, seeing as I brought it before this committee. A couple of things. We talk about timelines, and earlier on it was said, you know, the general election was put in as a reason why we were delayed. Well, I cannot in the scheme of all the things that we've talked about tonight, the fact that a general election was called in, you know, we knew about this money, not the exact figure maybe, but we knew about the money in March. We could have started provisionally working. So I think the general election is a complete red herring. But it is what it is. Look, guys, you've got a vote tonight, and you know, the Cabinet meets next Wednesday, the 11th of December. I brought this because I want Cabinet to think about what they did when they sat at that meeting and they didn't really dig deep. They didn't ask the questions that you've all asked tonight. It's been really great to hear the questions from both sides of the political structure. You've asked really good questions. They should have been asked at Cabinet. Now, I know Councillor Hooper will go back to Cabinet next Wednesday. He'll relay everything that you've said, and the Cabinet can then, as the executive, make some very quick decisions. And let me assure you of one thing. We will not lose this deal. I think the two people in this room, probably myself and Chris, have actually met with Omar, who runs Phi Capital. And I can assure you that man can jump through hoops and make anything happen, because that's what he said he would do. And they're at our beck and call, and they'll do this and they'll do that, and they're the best thing since sliced bread. So there ain't any way, shape or form that Phi won't find those houses. And the way the process works is effectively, it may be online or it may be electronic and digital, but effectively Phi have some filing cabinets. And the top filing cabinet's 2-bedroom houses, the one in the middle's 3, the one's 4, and if there's a bottom one, it'll be anything bigger. And I'm sure they've got one for 1-bedroom houses. And they keep those files full of available properties. It's what they do. It's their job, it's their profession, it's how they make a living. And as Chris mentioned, I think it was Chris, they've got a lot of people working for Thurrock. It's part of what they do. So under no circumstances do I believe in any way, shape or form not taking this back to Cabinet, letting Cabinet ruminate on their decisions, letting Cabinet then, they're the executive that set policy for this council. They're the right place to decide about our future procurement policy. They can look at it. I genuinely think, guys, you vote how you want to vote. I think you should vote that this goes back to Cabinet next Wednesday. It's only the 11th, it's a couple of days, it's not going to make a deal of difference whatsoever. And if we're going to start changing policy, the people who change policy are us, because we asked the Cabinet to do something about it. If we don't take this back, we're not asking Cabinet. And I just think we should go and ask that question. So I would ask you guys to think about it.
Councillor Harrell?
I asked a little while ago about if we did go back to Cabinet, could the deal still go through by the end of March? Cabinet's 8 days away. Would that make that much difference, really?
I think taking on board what Councillor Spate has said, of course, Simplify are set up to do this. This is what they do. When we got the money and we held the discussions, they were quite clear that they could achieve this target. But I would agree with what Gloria said earlier on, which is that every day that ticks past is another day towards a chance that we don't spend this money, and another day towards a chance that we have to give it back, and another day towards a chance that those 10 properties aren't ours.
Thank you, Chair. We know that time is of essence, but that's not our fault. Our job is to scrutinise. You keep on going on about the time frame. If we don't do this, that, we know that, and that's why we are possibly going to vote this through. We don't know. People might have different opinions, but that isn't our fault. We are here to scrutinise, okay? And what I'd like to see is my proposal, which is that anything above, in future, we have 3 quotes, so we all know where we are. Thank you.
Councillor Lydiard.
Chair, this is a purchase for £3 million, and we have to follow the law of the land. And it takes proper tenders and all sorts of extra processes. And you can't just say, well, I'll have 3 quotes and go out to local businesses. It just doesn't work like that.
We know we don't have to like it, but it's the system, the law, the procurement system. We say, as I always say, I've been brought up in a different world where those things would never happen. But this is a system. This is what we have to live with. So we don't have to like it, but we have to go. £3 million is a lot of money, and anybody's money in it. yeah, now is the time to vote on if we accept it and we take this to Cabinet, or we accept what the people have said over there and we face it. We run out, there's not enough time to make anything different, and we don't want to lose 10 homes. So that's the choice we've got on it. We don't have to like the vote. Yeah.
So there's two recommendations in front of you tonight. So the first one is, having considered the call-in, we refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out in writing any recommendations, in which case the decision maker will reconsider the decision as soon as practicable, which I think will be the 11th of December, so next Wednesday. So that's recommendation 1.1. All those in favour?
Sorry.
Well, yeah, recommendation 1.1, so referring it back to Cabinet.
Yeah, but that's what we're going to do anyway, isn't it? Is that attached to the alternative proposal?
Or there's recommendation 1.2, which is reject the call-in, which means that nothing happens and it proceeds as originally planned.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've got clarity on that now. Thank you.
So all those in favour of recommendation 1.1, so referring back to Cabinet. Okay. 2. Yeah, is that it? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm confused here. I thought we were going to make a vote with Councillor Jones's caveats being considered. You know, are we or not?
Helen, can we?
That would form part of the written recommendations in 1.1. So you have essentially two options here. It's the referral back to Cabinet and making written recommendations to them that will be considered at the next meeting, which is next Wednesday. Recommendation 1.2 is that you reject the call-in, which would mean that the decision continues as is, as was made by Cabinet on the 13th of November. Is that clearer, Councillor?
Yeah, that's more clear for me.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, no, that's not clear for me, because I want 1.1 with the recommendation from the call-in, which is it should pause its relationship and go on further. So that's 3 different separate recommendations. So you've got the recommendation that Councillor Spate has put forward, that's 1.1. No one's proposed that yet. You've got 1.1 with Councillor Jones's caveats, or you simply just reject the call-in at 1.2. Have I got that clear?
Does anybody want to speak on that? So basically we have got three proposals going through, haven't we now? Helen?
I note what you say, Councillor. I think if the decision is taken by this committee to agree to 1.1, there's then further discussions about what those written recommendations to Cabinet look like. So at the moment, the choice is between recommendation 1.1 or recommendation 1.2.
Yeah, thank you.
As I say, depending on what happens, we'll move forward.
Cheers.
So 1 is to take it back to Cabinet, and 2 is to agree with, well, okay, have we got that one? So the first vote will be, do we take this back to Cabinet?
Okay. Yeah, all those in favour of taking it back to Cabinet? Yeah. Okay, and all those against taking it back to Cabinet?
It's carried.
Okay. Yeah, so it's Chair's vote.
Don't need to count. There's not enough hands.
So I think now we move on to the discussion regarding what the alternative proposal will be to Cabinet, based on the discussions that we had earlier.
Okay, thank you. So I think I've got a rough idea what's going on here. So you either go for 1.1, which is the alternative proposal put through by Councillor Spate on page 14, 2.6.27, or there's the one that Councillor Jones muted, which was to send it to Cabinet with a message saying that this shouldn't happen again. But I might need to bring Councillor Jones in there because he might want to go for the recommendation on page 14. So over to yourself, Councillor Jones.
I just want to put forward that I thought that we was voting to put it through, but in future we have the 3 things going.
Yeah, that is still a possibility, 1.1, if Councillor Jones wants to recommend that. I'm not recommending that. I'm going for Councillor Spate.
like to recommend that?
Thank you,
Councillor Jones?
Councillor Kelly. Yeah, that's what I had ideas of doing. I don't want to lose these houses, lose this grant. So my idea is that we put it forward back to Cabinet with the caveat that in future they try and be a bit better on the procurement process, looking for others.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you. Can I just make a couple of recommendations to calm you down as well? So, yeah, it can go back to Cabinet, but just a really heavy caveat, we might have lost the funding. That's one. And secondly, why don't you put it on the work programme back in March to have a list of the properties that have actually been bought for your work programme for scrutiny?
To think about that one, that's complicated.
Totally confused. I thought we was putting it through,
Yeah.
and then in future we go out
Yes.
with free options.
Is that not what...
Is that, that's what I was at. But now you're going to put it back to Cabinet and then say them free options.
No.
Which is totally something different. I think, you know, it's crazy.
I don't see the point in taking it back to Cabinet. If they're going to approve it, I would hope again. So what's that? We're losing days for no reason.
No, I don't think well, for my little two-pedder, we take what he said, we don't take it back to Cabinet, and we're going to approve it now, but we just want to tell the Cabinet what our feelings of it has to be better next time, that there has to be more due diligence, whether. So we're not entirely happy, but we see the reasons why. That is how I see it. Councillor Hooper?
All I say, Chair, is I've already agreed that we need to do a market process. And I don't really see the value of taking it back to Cabinet, asking them to do something I've already instructed officers to do.
So we're agreeing on that then. We know, everybody clear of what we're putting through? No.
No, we've got that wrong.
We're not taking it back to Cabinet, but we're going to say we want it different in the future, basically. Is that?
Sorry, I think I'll clarify the situation. I'm going to hopefully rescue the situation. So we've had a vote here that now you're going to say is void, okay? So what we should have done was reject the call in 1.2 with caveats. Is that where we are? I'm pretty clear I've got that sorted. So I think on the basis of confusion, and if this is what you guys want to do, then I'm happy for that original vote to be void, only on the basis of confusion. So what we need to do then, I think, respectfully, is go for another vote, recommendation 1.2, reject the call-in which case the original Cabinet decision will proceed, with a caveat that in the future they're going to go out to procurement.
Yeah.
How's my aim? Is that all right, yeah? I think we're pretty clear on that.
Yeah, that's exactly what we all want, yes? 100%, all 10 of us are. Helen, can we, that's what...
Sorry, Councillor, if the call-in is rejected, then the effect of that is that the original decision will proceed. There's not the option for that to be a caveated decision. It's either that you accept the call-in and it goes back to Cabinet with some written recommendations, or reject the call-in, in which case the original Cabinet decision will proceed. However, there has obviously tonight been a really good discussion about the issues that have been raised by members in relation to the process, and assurances have already been given by officers about what will happen going forward. And as Councillor Lydiard has said a couple of times this evening already, any tender process for future contracts has to be done in accordance with those public contract procedure rules and the Council's contract procedure rules that are attached to the Constitution. So hopefully that gives members some assurance for the position going forward.
Well, we're all clear now, yes? So we're going to reject the call-in, it seems to be, so yes, that is... And yes, so we're all on that. Yeah. So, yeah, we need, yes. So, yes, we've got to go through the motions of putting our hands up and voting for it.
Okay, so I'll start off with recommendation 1.1, which is having considered the call-in, refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration, setting out in writing any recommendations, in which case the decision-maker will reconsider the decision as soon as practicable. All those in favour? Yeah. All those against? Yeah. Okay. And then we have recommendation 1.2, which is reject the call-in, in which case the original Cabinet decision will proceed. So all those in favour? Yeah. And then all those against? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lucy.
Sorry, yeah, just to confirm, so that was recommendation 1.2, reject the call-in, in which case the original Cabinet decision will proceed. That's the one that's been carried.
And brave. Councillor Green.
Chair, we've just had a councillor walk out the chamber and called us all not a very nice name. Can we have that reviewed by the monitoring officer in the morning, please?
You can, but I don't know what he said. Did he? It'd be on tape if he did. You can look at the tape. Yes, certainly. I didn't see it, but I'm sure. Okay. Right. We are. Oh, Councillor Lydiard.
Thanks, Chair. It just might be a good idea for the committee to have some instruction on procurement procedures for the future, because they are quite complex and, you know, will help us for the future.
They are, so I certainly need that, because I still can't, that brain don't go round.
Because once upon a time we used to have to advertise in Europe for these procurement processes.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, so I'm never going to get my head around that we've got to take so long when I've done it to a simple little thing like the roof's leaking and there's a little strip of tape on there which I could put my no-nails on and stop 10 weeks of it flooding. But no, you've got to go through 10 weeks of procurement and we're going to cause like probably thousands of pounds worth of damage because we have to go through that system. So that, I would rather get up there with my no-nails and do it and save that sort of money. So, but yeah, so I've got to get my head round why everything takes so long. Councillor Lydiard.
With a small jobs like that, we should have had a contract in advance and taken some time over it. But when a job like that comes up, it should be done the following day.
Well, I've got to throw in quickly. We've got 8 minutes. And
Can we just have a briefing note, which I know Lucy's very good at, and to us on procurement, and when she can?
Yeah, that's fine. I can arrange something. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got 8 minutes and we've got 2 things on the agenda. So you can give each one 4 minutes each, or we can roll it over. So I don't think, and there's some 106 money is what it's going to take us probably the same amount of time again, isn't it?
Chair, can I ask, why can't we extend standing orders like we have done in the past?
The new rules state, and I've been told at 5:30 today that 2.5 hours, that's it. If you're into a part of the agenda, then I'm allowed another 10 minutes. But the cut-off point, and we can't negotiate on that. There's no standing order anymore, and that's gone through. That is in the Constitution now, and we've got it there on computer if anybody wants to read it. So I would like to carry on, but my hands are tied. Your hands are tied. Sorry. Do we agree that we're going to roll it over? We don't want to roll it over. We all want to stay, but we can't. Sorry? Work programme. Have we got time for that?
We're going to add to it, don't we?
Yeah, it looks like we're going to add to the work programme.
Yeah. Okay, so just very, very briefly, going through the work programme. So the next meeting's on the 8th of January, so we'll roll over, we'll defer the Section 106 item and the Towns Board's item, so that will go on the report for, the agenda for January. We've also got Q2 finance update You can see them all listed, so I won't go through them. Does anybody have anything to add or amend or comment? Oh, Councillor Kelly?
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick suggestion. The Stantec report for the local plan, obviously we know that's been delayed. I wondered, obviously that's going to go back to the administration probably early next year, sort of January, February. I did wonder whether we could get sight of that report prior to Cabinet, so we have a chance to scrutinise it, then it gets to Cabinet. Any comments on that? Any issues? Thank you.
Councillor Watson?
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Because of the local plan delay, we're resetting up the local plan steering group, and you're on that. So you will be getting an invite very soon to start being the scrutiny on the steering group. That then can come into you, Chair, and whoever chairs that meeting can report into you if that's acceptable to you. But you will be getting the terms of reference have all been wrote. And at the moment, they're finding a date now to pull together all of the membership that was agreed in May onto the local plan steering group. And you're one of them.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great, and so just to confirm, but we would get sight of that prior to Cabinet for scrutiny.
Councillor Harrell?
Yeah, Chair, we had 6 tonight, we got through 4. If we put 2 back to next month, we've got 4 there already, so it's going to be 6 again. So it's unlikely we're going to get through 6 next month. And being honest, and the following month we've got 5, so that'll be 6 or 7 again. I just think we're mounting it up all the time.
It is, but
personally,
you bring that up with whoever changed the rules. We all want to stay, but somebody said we want to go home. Sorry, can we have a Councillor Kelly?
Cheers, thank you. So sorry, Councillor Watson, you was going to kindly
Councillor
answer
Watson.
me there. Cheers. Sorry.
Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson, you've got a...
Oh, sorry, Councillor Watson, you was going to answer me there. So we had the steering group will be able to have proper scrutiny prior to the report going back to Cabinet.
Yes, so what is going to happen is you will receive whatever the papers are. So your first meeting will probably be like appointing a chair, appointing the vice chair, looking at terms of reference, and then because we've got a whole 50 recommendations, those recommendations will start going to the steering group in order that you can have that conversation along with the planners. I'm not part of that. I might observe the first couple, but I won't be. That's totally up to how the chair wishes to run that. And I'm recommending that the chair of that steering group has their time reporting into Place ONS as well.
Yeah, more than happy with that. So, yeah, as long as we get an opportunity to scrutinise it. So we'll leave it on the back burner for our scrutiny. Because if this is the better platform, then we bring it here. But if the steering group covers it, then I'm happy with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we already agreed what that steering group membership was back in May as part of our processes. So some of you might already be on it. I'm sorry. I know that you are, Councillor Kelly, but I think Councillor Shinnick may be and Councillor Green. And then following on to that, it's how you run it and how you want and what you want to present in front of you, because I just really feel that it needs to be really open and transparent in that steering group.
Yeah, thank you. So with your permission, Chair, as long as that covers the scrutiny, I'm happy to cover it under the steering group. If not, we can bring it back here. But yeah, I'm sure that's all okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Kelly. And Councillor Kelly, thanks for getting me out of jail with the call in, because I was many of us was completely lost on that. So it's your previous many years of being a chair. So thanks for jumping in. That's what this committee is all about. I don't know everything, and I admit sometimes, especially when I'm a bit deaf as well. So, but yeah, we're all in it together. So thank you for jumping in on that. Councillor Lydiard?
Both those items that we haven't seen tonight are only for noting anyway. And if we've read them, which I have, noted them. We can finish that before 9:30. There'll
be a lot of questions on 106, won't there? I think it needs to come back, because I think I could fill a whole meeting on 106 questions. So, okay, thank you. And if it does come back for noting, then we'll be over in 5 minutes. at the next meeting, won't it? So if that works, but again, it's up to you. But can I bring in Councillor Watson?
Just one last thing. If anybody's got any questions on the Section 106 report and you can't wait until the next one, I'm happy to meet, and I'm also happy to have a conversation or drop me any questions.
It might work out better. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shinnock.
Chair, I know we haven't had enough time tonight, but is there any chance we start the planning meetings earlier, starting these meetings earlier? Just a thought.
Well, that's fine for me because I haven't got a job and I've got nothing else to do, and I enjoy getting out because I'm old, and this is like, for me, this is like a night out. So, but I know Councillor Arnold works. I know Councillor Kelly has a different shift to do. Councillor Dave sings, so I don't know when that happens. But so I would come in here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but say I know when I had a job, I would never been able to do it. So that's down to, then I will put it down to you guys who've got jobs, because I'm a 65, 70-year-old man that's got all the time in the world. Call in.
Sorry, just to
Helen
clarify
on
on
that.
that, the issue isn't the start time of the meeting. The new overview and scrutiny rules that were voted through by Cabinet at the end of October provide that there is a 2.5 hour limit on the proceedings, and then sets out what happens if business hasn't been concluded in that time.
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't think of that, Helen. I've already forgot the new rules. But yeah, if we're getting here at 4 o'clock, we'll still be over by 6:30, won't we? So it's not going to make any difference, is it? So if we start at 7, it's 9:30. So
What a confusing night.
it is a confusing night because I didn't get this till 5:30 and I didn't know. So, Councillor Shinnock.
In the open sea of transparency, we should have been told this beforehand about the timing. I have not. I didn't know nothing about it. Did any news?
Pre-meeting.
Oh, I knew at 5:30. And none of us know, so I don't know. Maybe does anybody know when it? I know it went through full council. It went through. Well, not looking at you because you're the one who knows everything. Helen, can I bring Helen on when it happened and how it happened?
Yeah. Yes, just to clarify on that point, the new procedure rules for overview and scrutiny did go through full council and were unanimously voted through by councillors.
Right, can I declare the meeting closed? Thank you, everybody, for the time you've come in and given us an extra 2 minutes.